Welcome back, guys. Today I thought I'd talk a little bit about Debian. Um, I think most of you know that I enjoy using Arch Linux distributions and I enjoy using Debian. Now, normally I uh, don't use Debian stable based distributions, although I would have to say that my favorite Debian distributions are MX15, um, Point Linux, and Sparky Linux. Those I enjoy using the stable version, but most of the time I prefer the testing version only because it gives me the ability to access later versions of software, later drivers, and I can usually configure Debian testing the way I want versus having to settle for some things uh, within Debian stable. Um, that being said, I also have gravitated towards some distributions that use Debian unstable or Debian SID. Mainly, that would be Seduction, um, and there's a few others that I've tried recently. And I have not had good luck with those. I found that Debian Unstable is just what its name implies. It is just too unstable. When I try to configure it the way that I want, invariably I will end up with broken packages that just can't be repaired. And so it ends up to be more trouble than it's worth. So I have decided that I will stay away from any distributions that are running Debian unstable. And rather than try to take a stable Debian distribution and change it to testing, which sometimes creates problems. Although, if you are going to try it, here is the way I would suggest: download your favorite Debian stable distribution and install it. Before you do anything else, before you run update, before you add packages, go into your sources list and everywhere that you see stable, change it to testing. Then save your sources list, excuse me, and then run your update. Invariably that works better, and then you can work from there, adding your drivers and things like that. So, but the alternative would be to do what I did with this Debian install that you're looking at. Basically, I went and installed Debian. If I want Debian, I guess I better start with Debian. So I went into Debian and I downloaded. Now let me get to the page that I want to show you. Okay, so if we want to install Debian testing, then go right to Debian. Now you see uh, Debian installer. Okay, so we want I'm going to expand this a little bit. We want to install Debian testing. And so there is a page, or it's also called Stretch. There is a page that's dedicated to Stretch, and this is it right here, Debian Stretch release information. Now, if you click on the Debian installer page, says for installation images and documentation about how to install testing, see Debian installer page. Okay, so we'll click on that, and don't mind my grandfather clock, it's 11 a.m. And so when we get to the installer page, you have a couple choices. You can install the CD, which is gives you, I believe, let's take a look. I believe it comes with XFCE. Now you can do the XFCE version, or you can do the net installation. Now the net installation is, it gives you a little bit more options during the install and allows you to configure it after. It doesn't have a whole lot included. So if we look at the net install image, it does not include a desktop environment. So what happens is, when you're doing the install, it will give you several choices: Mate, XFCE, LXDE, LXQT, Cinnamon, KDE. It'll list all of the various desktop environments and let you pick the one or ones that you want. You can select one or more than one. In this case, I've got Mate. So that's what I did. I took the net install. It's a smaller download. I used the dd command to create my bootable USB drive, and I did that from this page, and which is the Stretch installer. Now you can download the official release. You can do the current weekly release, or you can do the daily snapshot. It's up to you. Any changes that are made, if you want the latest and greatest, it would be the daily snapshot. So if you click on AMD 64 or the i386, whatever your architecture is, then you will have some choices, and you see here Debian testing AMD 64 net install 309 megabytes. Okay, and I believe that's the one that I installed. Now, a couple things when you're doing your install. Debian sometimes will not pick up your wireless keyboard and mouse, and that happens half the time. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So I usually plug in my USB keyboard and mouse to do the install. The other issue is Wi-Fi availability. If you have Wi-Fi, it will probably not work during the Debian install. So I would suggest getting a Wi-Fi adapter that can connect an Ethernet cable to your computer. So it won't require that you connect directly to your router, and it will give you an Ethernet connection, which solves the problem with your Debian install. Now, what I usually do, I'm going to show you, and there are a couple of options, so I'm going to just grab something. Okay, this here is a Wi-Fi adapter that Apple makes. There are others. I've got one made by Netgear that works also. What you do is you hook up, once you plug this in and it connects to your Wi-Fi network, then all you need to do is plug in your Ethernet cable here and then run the wire to your computer. So it brings in your Wi-Fi signal, converts it to Ethernet to your computer, gives you an Ethernet connection without having to jump through hoops. It's really useful. You can buy them. This one here cost, Apple typically charges more. This one was like 69 bucks, I think. This is the older Airport Express, I believe it's called. Netgear has them cheaper. So if you look at a Wi-Fi adapter, just make sure that it has the ability to plug in a Cat5 cable, an Ethernet cable. Okay, let me plug this back in. And once you plug it in, at least in my experience, they connect up to your Wi-Fi pretty easily. So now that you've been made aware of a couple of caveats when installing Debian, namely the USB keyboard issue and the Wi-Fi issue, once you have those satisfied, then it's a graphical install. When you boot up your USB, it will give you the option of a graphical install or a text. So you want to go with the graphical install, and it'll walk you through all of the selections. It's pretty straightforward. It is pretty intuitive, and it'll get you through the install. And so now once you boot up, what I would recommend, if you're gonna do any gaming, you want to enable 32-bit architecture. And so if we Google that, Debian 32-bit architecture, if we Google that, then you're going to see multi-arch implementation. And so you see how to use 32-bit packages on a 64-bit system. That's important because Steam for gaming uses 32-bit. And so make a note, when you finish your install, one of the first things you should do, whether you're using Debian stable or testing, is enable 32-bit architecture. Now, let's see how this page, okay, so it's pretty easy. You're going to copy and paste this command. If you're running 64-bit, you're going to go to a terminal, you're going to copy and paste. Before you do your update, you want to enable 32-bit architecture. This is the command you'd use right here. Then you're going to make sure you do aptget update. That will enable your system to utilize 32-bit packages, which in multimedia, in gaming, that's very important. So that's something you want to do right away before you do anything else. Then once you do your install and you convert to testing, if you're going to, so basically what you'll do, my recommendation my recommendation would be to go into your synaptic. Let's see. You're going to go into synaptic and you're going to take a look at your repositories. Now, these are my repositories. Google, when you install Google Chrome, it adds this in. These two are the CD-ROM repositories, which are disabled once you finish your install. So they're not checked, so they're disabled. If you remember, I did a video not too long ago about NetSelect apt. Okay, so it identified Cogentco as my fastest mirror. So you're going to have your Debian mirror. Now you can see I have it designated as stretch. And make sure you have main, contrib, and non-free enabled. So I've got Cogentco for my main Debian repository enabled for stretch or testing, main, contrib, and non-free. Then I've got security and Deb Multimedia, and so that brings me to Deb Multimedia. Deb Multimedia is something you need to install before you do anything. So once you finish your install, your top 3 items would be to install Deb Multimedia as a source, enable your machine for 32-bit architecture, and change your, if you're installing stable, change everywhere you see stable, either put testing or stretch, and make sure you have contrib and non-free enabled. Once you do that, you've got those 3 items out of the way, then go ahead and do aptget update. That's important because you want to set the foundation correct before you build your house. So before you add anything to your Debian install, you want to make sure that you've established the proper foundation. That will make a difference in how you and whether you're able to install packages properly. Okay, so as an example, if you don't do the steps in the order that I've suggested, you will have trouble when it comes to time to install Hearthstone, some Steam applications. You'll have some issues, especially with Hearthstone. I went through a Debian install yesterday to prepare for this video, and I did something out of sync, and I could not get Hearthstone to install. So I reinstalled Debian testing, and I enabled my 32-bit architecture. I set up my sources for the way I wanted, testing with contrib and non-free, and I also added Deb Multimedia as a source. Once I finished those 3, the first thing I did was install my Debian, my Nvidia driver. Now, in the later version of Debian, which is what we're talking about, the command to install your Nvidia driver is, and I will show you, sudo aptget install Nvidia driver. That's it. Press enter. I've already done it, so I'm not going to do it again, but that's what you'll do. And then once you finish that, it's going to tell you during that install that you're going to have to reboot to finish off the install. That's fine. But before you reboot, you want to install Nvidia settings. So once you finish your install on Nvidia driver, you want to go to install Nvidia settings. Nvidia settings, once you reboot, it will pick up your driver, and it'll also give you the Nvidia, let's see, it'll give you the Nvidia settings menu. Okay, so it's important that you have this so you can double check to make sure that you've got the correct driver running and that everything's running okay. So for Nvidia, it's sudo aptget install nvidia-driver. Finish that process and then do sudo aptget install Nvidia settings. Then you will reboot. Once you boot back up, you'll have your Nvidia driver enabled and you'll have your settings menu. The next thing that I did is I installed my Broadcom Wi-Fi. And if you have a Broadcom Wi-Fi card, this is what you'll do to install it. Sudo aptget install Broadcom sta-dkms. That will install your Broadcom driver. Once you finish that install, reboot, and your Broadcom will show in your listing. You see Broadcom, it will show in your Wi-Fi listings. You'll be able to select your Broadcom Wi-Fi network and connect to it. So I've already done it. I'm not going to do it again. Sudo aptget install Broadcom sta-dkms. That is your Debian install for Broadcom. Okay, so once I finished those 5 steps, which was, and I'll recap for you, install Deb Multimedia as a source, take a look at your sources and convert them from stable to testing or stable to stretch, and enable 32-bit architecture. Once you do that, and then you install your Broadcom Wi-Fi and your Nvidia driver, the next thing you're going to want to do is sudo aptget install wine i386. Okay, that's going to install the 32-bit architecture of Wine, which will enable you to install Steam and play all of your Steam games. Steam requires 32-bit architecture. This, when you install the 32-bit version of Wine, that will set the foundation for both Steam and Play on Linux. So go through that Wine install. Once you finish it, then you can install Steam and Play on Linux. Okay, once you install both of those, after you've enabled 32-bit architecture and installed your Wine, then you are good to go, because then you'll be able to install things like Hearthstone, get your Steam running. Hearthstone is running off Play on Linux. If you look at my games, I've only got Play on Linux and Steam. Steam gives me all the Steam games. Play on Linux gives me the ability to run Windows games, because Play on Linux installs them through Wine. But if I click on Play on Linux, you'll see I installed Hearthstone. It's really the only game that I'm interested in, but I have to have that through Play on Linux. And I did a video not too long ago on the installation process for Hearthstone using Play on Linux. Now, I also, the new Chrome version will handle all of your streaming, Amazon, Netflix, and Hulu. And so when you're in Google Chrome and you sign into your Amazon, your Netflix, or your Hulu account, click on the settings, more tools, add to desktop. It will add an icon to your desktop just like I have here. Now it's not quite as nice as using ICE SSB. However, because Google Chrome now handles all three streaming sources, I'm using it instead of ICE. So for example, once I double click, it will open a new window, a new browser for Hulu. So as you can see, it works fine, but it's not as nice and clean as ICE SSB. But really, that's your choice. You can use ICE SSB. I don't know. Let's see if it's available in Debian. And it probably is not. No. So that's something that you can download online. Sometimes it's called ICE. No. Okay, so it's not available in the Debian repositories. However, it is out there. There is a new version that actually incorporates Chromium, Chrome, and Firefox. And if you look online, you should be able to find that. I had the deb file on a SSB, I'm sorry, a USB flash drive, but I was dumb that day, and somehow I deleted the deb file, and now I haven't had the need to go back and re-download it. So I'm using Chrome's version of the desktop icons. Now I also, when you do things in the order that I've recommended, you'll also have no trouble installing Kodi Media Center. So if you follow the sequence that I've given you, you'll be able to install all of your multimedia items. And I would suggest to you that you get those out of the way. Once you set up your foundation, as I mentioned, then go ahead and install your Wine, your Steam, your Play on Linux, your Kodi, and if you would like to, you would also be able to compile OBS Studio, which is what I did. I compile, and I did a video on this recently. So again, within Debian, I just recently compiled OBS Studio, as you can see, and that's what I'm using to make this video. So OBS Studio is not available through conventional Debian sources. However, MX15 Debian does have it available through their repos. And I'm hoping that at some point it becomes available through conventional plain vanilla Debian repos, but that's not the case right now. So as you can see up in the top right in my system tray, I've got caffeine, I've got Redshift, pSensor, Clipit, Synapse. I installed Compton to eliminate any screen tearing issues. There is Synapse. I've got the weather and the calendar, Wi-Fi, volume. That's my system tray. This is the Debian testing install with Mate desktop. Um, my theme, this theme that I'm using here, if we, let's see, where is appearance? And I don't use Mate a lot, but I'm getting to like it more, so I'm starting to use it more often. But if you go into appearance, you can see I am using Rebellin Sapphire. Now Rebellin Sapphire, I did a video a few days ago on Rebellin Linux. It was a Debian distribution based on unstable, and I had some issues with it. But one of the things I was able to do is copy the theme that they use, which I really liked. It's nice and clean, and so I'm using Rebellin Sapphire theme, and I'm using my standard Fienza icons. They work extremely well together. As a matter of fact, Rebellin Sapphire, I believe, requires the Fienza icon, and it works extremely well. I like the look of the. It's got kind of a Mac look to the window theming. It's really, I like it. It's really nice. And so basically that is how I got to this desktop. And as you can see, I've got everything that I need. I installed, now keep in mind the net install for Debian doesn't come with a whole lot. But I installed Banshee, GUVC View, Kazam, Kodi Media Center, OBS, OpenShot, SM Player. So I have basically added everything that I normally add through my Debian install. Office, it did come with LibreOffice. I may delete that and install WPS Office, which is something I prefer. Internet, it came with Firefox. I added Google Chrome. Graphics, I added Shotwell. It did come with most of this out of the box. Games, as I mentioned, Play on Linux and Steam. Education, that comes out of the box with LibreOffice. And for accessories, I added Caffeine, Cherry Tree, Clipit, LeafPad, Redshift, Synapse. Everything else came with it. So as you can see, it's a very nice, clean, snappy, responsive install. But it's important that you follow the sequence so that everything installs properly and you don't get any messages saying you have broken packages, which is a real pain. But broken packages happen usually because you didn't set your foundation properly. So you need to follow the steps that I outlined at the beginning of the video. That way your foundation is set properly. Then you can add anything to it, and it's going to configure it properly for you. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. This was devoted to Debian. I really enjoy Debian distributions, and for simplicity's sake, I do enjoy just plain vanilla Debian from the Debian website. Now, as I mentioned, if I'm going to install a proprietary distribution based on Debian, then I usually gravitate towards MX15, Anti-X or Antix, Point Linux, Sparky Linux. Those are my favorite proprietary type distributions for Debian. But by and large, if I'm running Debian, it's usually Debian testing, which is available through the Debian website. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for stopping by. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you soon. Take care.